Hi all, today we have an exciting interview with the ASTQ president, Andrew Pollner. Andrew, how are you doing?
Doing very well. Thanks for having me.
First thing is, what led you to get involved with ISTQB and ASTQB?
Well, it was back around 2003, uh, over 20 years ago. What I found out was that in Europe, they had a program around testing certifications that was very popular in Europe because they tend to like standards more than we do in the US. And I decided to import that certification into the US, essentially brought some instructors over, taught some classes. And before long, I realized that people were really liking that. It helped, bring consistency to the test teams. It helped educate people on testing since nobody had formal testing backgrounds. Uh, and then a few years later, the British scheme became the international scheme, ISTQB, and then the American board began. I was invited to join the US board for ASTQB, for ISTQB, which we now call ASTQB. And and that's kind of where it all started. It's basically just kind of my knowledge of a particular certification program that was available, and then just kind of promoting that in the US, seeing that people saw value in it, and kind of that's where it all started for me.
Yeah, and there are a ton of people that see value in these ISTQB certifications, especially through ASTQB, and I'm sure there are many people that are glad that you actually brought this over to the US. So, pivoting on that with all of your software testing knowledge, what drove you to get into automated testing?
Sure. So my background is technical. So from one perspective, the automation was kind of easy for me. When you have the programming background, you kind of can understand the test automation. But also there's the challenge of implementing automation and challenge, I mean, in kind of the positive way. It's like a puzzle. How do you make automation work for your testing? How do you really help it improve the testing? Um, what I found in my own career was that automation was one of these necessities. It's something that I had a situation where I was on a project, I was the only tester. I had to find some way to make it more effective, more efficient. So I was searching for ways to do that. So I found out that there's a bunch of automated tools that can help convert manual tests to automated tests. And it was kind of a survival tactic, right? It's like, when you're a team of one, and you got a lot of testing to do, you're either going to spend a lot of time, burn the midnight oil, or try to be more efficient about it. So I think because I had the programming background, uh, I did some research. I found out about these testing tools, and I thought, okay, that's great. Let's start using the test tools. The initial tools were not very feature rich, so you had to kind of like develop the capability within the tool itself. They had a programming language, but not a lot of built-in functionality. But that was okay, just kind of meant that you had to do more of the creation. Whereas over time, the tools became more and more feature filled. And what I also find is that although test automation requires development skills, it's a little different from how you approach it than how you would develop an application. I use kind of the analogy that when you develop, you're developing code from the inside out. You're creating code, and the result of that code is an application. So from the inside, you develop something that you then see on the outside of the application. With test automation, it's actually a little different. You're developing code from the outside in. You're developing code that tests the outside, the application, to make sure that the inside, the code from that application is working properly. So it does take a little bit of adjusting. There's some differences in how you approach it, but otherwise, it is technical, it is programming, and there are different ways to implement. The other thing I want to talk about with respect to automation is that for automation to work properly, you need to have some kind of structured approach. These days, what we call that is an automated framework. It's kind of like a collection of functions and capability. So that's very important to have a framework that kind of keeps everything under control, keeps everything working properly, minimizes where you need to make your changes, when you need to make updates. All the kind of best practices in coding also apply to test automation. And then another aspect is that often a lot of people that are doing testing aren't really all that technical. So what happens is you can't really expect them to understand the automation code and how you built that. So by using a framework, you can also help create an environment that's maybe less technical. Maybe they fill out the data that they need tested in a spreadsheet, and then the framework can pull in that data and test against the application. So it's really important to be able to leverage the whole team, not just have technical people, but have automation that can leverage people with that real domain knowledge, that real understanding of the business, who may not be all that technical, but they can provide the data, the inputs, the expected results, the right navigation paths, how is the application used, when is it used, what's important. All those things are so important for effective testing. So when you have that, plus the technology in a kind of a structured framework, plus the engineering in terms of the overall architecture, that's kind of when you have a win-win situation with test automation.
Yeah, and that's great. And so for people that want to learn more about test automation, ISTQB does offer two certifications. And I think a lot of people want to know, why are there two certifications on test automation rather than just one?
Right. So when we first released the test automation engineer certification, unbeknownst to a lot of people, we had another one kind of on the back shelf that was more about the managing the test automation process. But because it was kind of a new concept at the time for ISTQB, we just led with the engineer certification for the folks that are really the practitioners in the field. Um, so that certification has done great. It's very popular. A lot of organizations have adopted those practices. When it came time to, updating the body of knowledge, as we call our syllabi, we started thinking about what else could we add in here, what's new, what's different from when we initially launched this, and a number of things came out. For instance, the whole concept of DevOps or DevSecOps. Well, that really wasn't around back in 2006, 2016 when this first came out. So we ended up saying, okay, well, we need to figure out how to talk about test automation within the context of DevOps and DevSecOps and pipelines, because that's kind of how software development, modern software development is being done these days. So that was one aspect of it. We realized that the test automation engineer syllabus was focused a lot on kind of how you build test automation, which is still very important. But now that there's a lot of really good solutions, there isn't always the requirement to kind of build, say, from scratch your test automation solution. You can use tools and build off of those tools and then figure out where to incorporate those tools as part of your whole software development lifecycle. So that was the challenge, is to figure out how to talk about that. So we realized that there was the engineering aspect of developing and maintaining test automation, but there's also the strategic aspect of kind of deploying it in a project, in a program, in an enterprise. The question was, how do you talk about all of that in one syllabus? So the answer was, well, you don't. You need to expand the body of knowledge to be two syllabi. They're essentially complementary syllabi. So we have the new version, which is Test Automation Engineering version 2.0, and we have a brand new Test Automation Strategy version 1.0. And those two syllabi constitute the body of knowledge for ISTQB. And one of the really nice things is that they're both tool agnostic, and that's kind of by design. ISTQB in general does not promote commercial tools. It's very important for us to actually make sure that the tools that we offer are or the tools that we talk about are generic or potentially open source tools. We're not really in the business of essentially promoting any particular vendor or vendor solution. So the way in which the syllabi are written, they're written in such a way that they're essentially tool agnostic, and they provide you a lot of really good information that you could apply really regardless of what tool you might choose to use.
So on that point, talking about tools, if you go on the internet, places like Reddit, you see all over people talking about tools that you should learn and not necessarily about test automation certifications. So you said these certifications are tool agnostics. How do
Mhm.
you think that test automation certifications help in implementing actual test tools?
Right. So it's like anything else. If you don't really have kind of an approach to how you're going to use a tool, you're kind of flying blind, right? It's like whatever tool feature or function it might tell you about, you think, okay, maybe I'll just use that. You're not really thinking about it from a planning standpoint. You don't have a strategy in terms of what features and functionality do I really need to have in my tool to test the application that we're trying to test. So it's really important to kind of have that grounding knowledge of what the capability is that you need and when you need to apply that and how you need to apply that. And only then say, okay, now let's find tools that meet those needs and figure out how to apply this strategy that we have using a particular tool.
Yeah, that's great to know because I think a lot of people are thinking about how do I use this tool, not actually how they apply this tool. So piggybacking that, do you have any recent examples of how organizations use the knowledge from ISTQB on test automation?
Sure. So, we see that a lot of people take the exams, take the courses, take that back to their organizations. So clearly there's a big demand on people kind of getting that knowledge because that knowledge is really not available elsewhere in kind of the unique way in which we've put it together for the ISTQB syllabus. What's interesting is I literally was on a call with some customers recently, a big testing community, and they had one featured speaker, and the lady was talking about her particular group. And what they ended up doing was taking the ISTQB test automation syllabus and essentially following that and using that to lead them, to guide them for their own strategy for their program. And I was like, oh, wow, I felt like a proud father, with this kid just graduating from school and getting a great job. It's like, wow, something that I put out there really, people are using it. People recognize the value that it brings. It was a proud moment. It was fun. It was really nice.
Yeah, that's nice to hear, and I like hearing that you feel like a proud father when people are using this. So, with one thing that people are really looking into is the effect of AI. AI is all everywhere. Everywhere you read on the internet, it's about AI. Everyone's worried about how AI will affect different parts of software testing. So, my last question for you is, how will or how does AI affect test automation in particular?
That is a great question. There's really so many dimensions to that question. So it's kind of like, where do we start with that? I can break it up into, kind of two halves, right? One half is like uh, testing applications that have AI built into them versus kind of using AI to help you test. Hey, guess what? ISTQB and by extension ASTQB has two syllabi on test on I'm sorry on AI. One of them is specifically about teaching you the grounding concepts of AI and a little bit about using it for testing, but mostly about how to test systems that have AI. And we've actually just recently introduced a brand new body of knowledge, syllabus on using generative AI for testing. Now, I know the question is around that and automation, but it is important to note that when you use some of these tools, AI code generators, they are essentially developing automated tests for you. So they are automating the process of testing. So what you're finding is that there's tools out there now that can actually help the tester generate automated test cases. But if you look, if you kind of shift left, they can also help you define requirements and develop test cases. So it's quite a good aid. It really helps you out in a number of ways for what you're doing in testing. Now, question is, did you hear about the AI code generation tool that ended up overwriting all of the code? I mean, you're hearing stories all the time, or the one that ended up deleting a database. You're hearing these stories more frequently now that people are starting to use these things more. So my big concern, quite honestly, is that if you, as a tester, don't really know what automation is, what it does, how it works, how it should work, how to leverage it. If you don't know any of that and you just rely on code generation for your tests, how do you know if those tests are the right tests, are good tests, are complete tests? You don't know, right? So it's really important for people that are in the field, that are getting in the field, that really want to do this, that want to use AI. It's really important to know what it is that you need to be doing so you can do some checks and make sure that your database wasn't, overwritten, or that your file folders didn't just disappear, and that the bot told you that everything's still there when it really isn't. Now, obviously, there's a lot of good that they do, and we need to recognize that, and that's fine as well. But because it's an automated means, you do need someone, a human, that can actually be the ultimate arbiter of whether or not what that AI engine did was useful and valuable and complete, or maybe you need to prompt it a little more effectively so that it actually gives you what you need. So I kind of think about this similarly to like the beginnings of test automation, where people would, have an automated tool that they'd hit record and it would record a script, and then all of a sudden they'd replay that script, and oh, that was great, except when something changed on your screen, on your UI, and you tried rerunning that script, and hey, guess what? It didn't run anymore. And now all of a sudden you have to be debugging and understanding why didn't it rerun, and how do I fix this? And that was kind of the beginnings of test automation, the kind of struggles and problems that people found. Some of those still exist, but a lot of that's been kind of addressed in one way or another. I think what we're finding with AI is that you need to kind of have that same mentality of, making sure that you understand what the tool generated for you. Was it the right thing? And just like you would, as a senior person, you would teach a junior person what the right thing to do is, or just how we have more advanced certifications at ISTQB that teach you more advanced techniques to be more effective at testing, to get greater coverage in testing. We really need to be thinking about the AI engines as well in terms of doing that. In terms of testing applications that have AI built into them, that's a very complex process. There's a number of different techniques, sample-based techniques. There's techniques using statistical algorithms and other techniques that can get quite complex to validate the actual models that are used, that application was built off of. It really can get very complex, and unfortunately, there's no easy answers for that. But the long and short of it is that AI as a tool is just another tool for the testers' war chest of tools. It can really help them. But it's not a shortcut to kind of really understanding the essentials of automated testing, automated frameworks, the kind of data that you need for testing, risk-based testing, where are the high risk areas that you want to get to first. All of those things. I mean, if you have a prompt for every single one of those things and your AI engine can develop the appropriate tests, that's great. But you need to know what it is that you're prompting for to kind of get the right answer. So I may have repeated that several times here, but it really is an important point, and I think that people will see the value of using AI for testing when they actually do that more thoroughly.
I think that your insight into AI being a test tool rather than
Uh-huh.
replacing testers will be very reassuring to people that are nervous that AI is going to take their jobs and things of that nature.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, this is just a very short discussion conversation that we're having on the topic. AI is changing, daily, weekly, monthly. So we don't even know from, you know, 1 month to the next, are the tests that I'm generating the same tests that I really felt were the right tests a month ago, or is it going kind of in a different direction? Those are things that we need to be thinking about and verifying, right? As testers, we have to verify what we're producing to make sure that it's going to be effective for our ultimate goal of validating the software under test.
Well, Andrew, I think that your insight today will be very useful for senior testers and junior testers wanting to know more about test automation and ASTQB and ISTQB. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me. You take care.